All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice exam series where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please subscribe. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. A hospital administrator is reviewing a new patient's records to identify the best treatment approach. He examines the patient's previous diagnoses, treatments, and responses to medication. What type of information is the administrator prioritizing in this review? This is an applied question because we are taking our behavior analytic knowledge, our behavior analytic task list, and applying it to a situation where a hospital administrator is the focus. The best way to get better at your fluency is to apply our terms, our ideas, and our technologies to your everyday life. So if we have a situation where a hospital administrator is reviewing patient records and they're looking at diagnoses, treatments, and responses to medication, well, what are they prioritizing? Would it be educational, historical, procedural, or behavioral? Well, this clearly would be their historical records. And when you're an analyst, you also need to prioritize or look at historical records for your client. A supervisor wants to measure how often a cashier greets customers during a 2-hour shift. The supervisor uses a clicker counter to record each instance of the cashier saying hello as a customer approaches the register. In total, the supervisor recorded 20 instances. What type of measurement procedure is being used? So we have a measurement question, fairly straightforward measurement question. Measurement questions, if you've done the preparation, should not give you too much trouble. In this case, what do we know? We know the supervisor wants to measure how often, so that's a key, right? We have words or phrases like how long, indicating time, and how often, indicating an amount. So how often, immediately we're thinking count and frequency and rate. How often a cashier greets customers during a 2-hour shift. They use a clicker counter and record every instance of the cashier saying hello. So we've got a continuous measurement recording every time the cashier says hello. What are we looking at? Because our total was 20 instances. Now, A is rate. Rate would be frequency over time. Since we have just decided we have 20 instances, and that is what the supervisor recorded, they weren't necessarily getting the rate because they didn't convert it to rate. In order to find the rate, you have to convert it to rate. All we have right now is how many times it occurred. So the measurement procedure that was used was event recording. If you want to turn it into rate, then you can take those 20 instances, divide it by the 2 hours, and find your rate. But the supervisor used event recording. Obviously, it's not latency because we're not measuring time, and it isn't interval recording because we're not breaking it into intervals. What the supervisor used was event recording, just how many times something happened. An HR manager is conducting a team building workshop for employees from different cultural backgrounds. To create an inclusive environment, she first surveys participants about their preferred communication styles, norms around teamwork, and expectations for leadership. What is the HR manager integrating into the workshop design? All right, let's think about this. We have a question that's asking about the HR manager. So we're looking at the HR manager's behavior. We know the manager has a team building workshop, employees from different cultural backgrounds. On the 6th edition task list, culture is emphasized. She is asking about communication styles, norms, expectations. So all these things point to the HR trying to integrate culture into the workshop. So let's look at A, identifying skill strengths. Was this a skill assessment? No, the HR manager wasn't looking for strengths of the team, but rather who they were. B, identifying deficits to address. Was she looking at weaknesses or deficits? Again, no. How do you talk? What do you believe about teamwork? What are your expectations? These are not strengths or deficits. They are their culture, their beliefs. So she's trying to identify relevant cultural variables. And this is a key part of our new 6th edition task list. And then D, identify professional experience and background. There could be some background talk here, but when we talk about their norms and their communication styles and their expectations, we're talking about their cultural variables. How can we incorporate those into the workshop? A behavior analyst is contracted to design a behavior plan for a student who is aggressive towards their peers during non-preferred activities. The analyst starts to track how often the student screams at a peer, but the teacher reports that screaming is not necessarily the issue. What is the main problem with the analyst's data at this point? What are good data made of? Good data consists of accuracy, reliability, validity, and believability. When we talk about inter-observer agreement, we're talking about believability. Reliability is the ability to measure the same thing again and again. Validity is the ability to measure the right thing. What is the problem here? What's the problem with the data? We're not talking about the fidelity. We're talking about the data. Well, the behavior analyst is supposed to be tracking aggression, but the analyst is tracking screaming. They're tracking the wrong thing. So does that have to do with believability or the ability to track it over and over? No, the issue here is validity. The data are not valid. We've measured the wrong behavior. You, a behavior analyst, relocate to a new state and plan to continue providing behavior analytics services. What should you do first to ensure compliance with local regulations? If you move to a new state, a new city, a new location, you always want to make sure and check, are you up to date on licensing or other requirements in the place that you live? In this case, you move to a brand new state. What do you need to do first? A, reach out to your new clients and inform them that you just moved. That would be fine, but is that going to help with local regulations? Probably not. B, only provide direct services until you are licensed in the new state. You should not be providing services if you are not licensed to do so. C, work under the supervision of a behavior analyst in that state. You're not required to do that unless there's some regulation in place that says you have to do that. D, obtain necessary licenses in that state. That's the first thing we have to do. Move to the new state, make sure we are compliant with their policies, with their certifications, with their regulations. A doctoral student begins research for their dissertation and recruits 10 high schoolers to participate. Due to a delay, the student doesn't start the project until April. The following month, 5 students say they can't participate anymore due to summer vacation. What threat to internal validity does this represent? All right, we have another threat to internal validity question. Internal validity has to do with a functional relationship between our independent and dependent variables. We have several threats to this, including history, maturation, attrition, and instrumentation, amongst others. History has to do with the past of the participant, so their personal learning history. Maturation has to do with their growth and development into the future. Attrition has to do with the dropping out of participants. And instrumentation has to do with what we're using to measure and take data. Now, I know I always tell you to attack the question first, and you should, but I think this was a good opportunity to remind us what our threats are. In this case, the student recruits 10 high schoolers. They delay the start, and the project doesn't go off until April. 5 students then can't participate. What has happened? Well, the students have dropped out. What threat does this match? Well, it's not history. It doesn't have to do with their past or learning history. It's not maturation. It's not due to their growth or development. It's simply attrition. We lost 5 of our 10 participants. Our data may change. We have less data. It's just a threat to establishing a strong relationship between our independent variable and the dependent variable. A researcher is observing a group of primates in the wild to identify potential triggers for aggressive behaviors. She records what happens before and after each instance of aggression to determine patterns. What type of assessment is the researcher using? So we have an assessment question, and with the assessment, we always want to ask ourselves, what are we trying to accomplish? What kind of data are we gathering? What do we know so far? We know this researcher is observing primates and looking for triggers for aggressive behaviors. She records what happens before, so our antecedents, and after, consequences, aggression. B, ABC data assessment, essentially. What do we call that? A, an indirect product assessment. Well, she's not indirectly assessing this behavior. She's watching this behavior personally. It's direct. B, a descriptive assessment. Yeah, this is a descriptive assessment. We're describing what our antecedents are, what our consequences are relative to the behavior. C, a full functional behavior assessment. This is probably part of the full functional behavior assessment, but we're not looking at the entire functional behavior assessment here. We're just looking at the descriptive assessment. And a component analysis. A component analysis takes parts of an intervention and looks at each one, not what is occurring here. This is simply a descriptive assessment. A researcher is conducting a study with pigeons to examine the effects of different reinforcement schedules on pecking behavior. The study is performed under tightly controlled laboratory conditions and focuses on basic principles of behavior. Which branch of behavior analysis does this scenario best represent? When we think about branches of behavior analyses, we're thinking about behaviorism, we're thinking about ABA, we're thinking about experimental analysis of behavior, and professional practice. If you get a question like this and they start talking, and the question starts talking about studies with animals and in controlled laboratory conditions, immediately think experimental analysis of behavior. Think about what Skinner did. Skinner used pigeons. Skinner used these animals in labs. What is ABA? What is applied behavior analysis? ABA is when we take behavioral research and behavioral studies and implement them with humans. We start to research human behavior. Experimental analysis of behavior is much more related to controlled animal studies. Professional practice is when we take all this knowledge from our research and actually apply it in practice. So think about what our technicians do every day. And then behaviorism is just our theories, our methods, our thoughts about behavior. In this case, we're experimenting with pigeons in a controlled environment. That most represents experimental analysis of behavior. A supervisor designs a token economy with a response cost for use with the 9-year-old client. The supervisor first explains the new plan to the technician and then demonstrates how to implement the plan. The technician watches the supervisor and then attempts to plan themselves. What should the supervisor do next? Personnel management question, a training question, behavior skills training. What have we done already? Because we have to think about what the supervisor is doing next. What has the supervisor already done? Well, they designed the intervention. They explained the plan. They modeled the plan. The technician attempts the plan. What do we do now? Now that the technician has attempted the plan themselves. A, provide feedback. Yeah, the technician attempted it. Give them feedback. What do they do right? What do they do wrong? B, create goals for the technician. Goals should happen at the very beginning. We are way past goals, or at least should be way past goals. C, allow the technician to implement the plan on their own. You can, but first we need to correct and complement what they did right and wrong. D, gather inter-observer agreement on the technician's behavior. In the moment, after they've attempted to plan themselves, you need to give them feedback. What did they do good? What was bad? How do we fix it? And what should they continue doing in the future? Mary enjoys helping her art teacher clean up after class because the art teacher allows her to use whatever paint she wants. Mary does not, however, enjoy math class and refuses to participate. How can the Premack principle be used in this situation? What is the Premack principle? When you get a term, let's try and define it in our head, especially during practice. Premack principle says we are going to use the opportunity to participate or engage in a preferred activity or response as reinforcement for engaging in a non-preferred activity or response. In this case, what do we know? We know Mary enjoys helping clean up art with the art teacher. Mary does not enjoy math class. So applying basic Premack principle ideas, how do we set Mary up for success? Well, we tell her, if you clean up for math class, you can clean up with the art teacher. You should be predicting answer choices like this. Let's look at A, allow Mary to clean up after art class. and then tell her she needs to participate at least 3 times in math. Well, this is the reverse. She's already gotten what she wants. So the motivation to participate in math has gone down. B, do not allow Mary to clean up anymore after art class if she is not participating. You can do that, but that is not establishing any sort of contingency using the Premack principle. C, tell Mary that if she participates in math, then she can clean up after art. Good. This is applying the Premack principle to this situation. And then D, give Mary 2 or 3 known requests and then ask her to participate in math class. That is much more related to behavior momentum and the high probability request sequence. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, like, share. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard.